Hello, I'm Steve Bell, Chairman and CEO of Tennessee Bank and Trust. We are a privately owned bank with offices in Cool Springs and Green Hills focused on customers that would like traditional, personalized banking with high-tech services. Our staff of experienced bankers have been empowered to take care of their customers. We are a business that happens to be a bank, and our customers tell us the difference is clear.
Anybody who runs a business, a big business, a small business, new business owner, whatever, we're all concerned about good employees. I wanted to ask you, Scott, if you would just kick us off by explaining what you think are the biggest challenges in this environment in terms of hiring and retaining good employees.
The hiring of good employees is what you need to do right off the bat. With the market the way it is today, you have a lot of people out there who are struggling to find work, and you have a lot of people who are trying to get their foot in the door, and so you have to be very selective about what works for you and your company and make sure that you're hiring the right employees. When you have the right employees, you need to make sure that you have the right processes in place and the right culture and other things in place that's going to help you keep the ones that you have, because you know that your competitors are going to be looking for the right ones.
We get a lot of resumes from people in the publishing business, and there are a lot of people looking for work that are writers and designers, and we don't have any problem with getting a pool of talent on that side. But it's when we start having to compete with everybody else, like when I'm trying to compete with Clint for good programmers, then I'm up a creek because they all prefer to work for him. And so it's when you're looking for developers or programmers, IT people, accountants, that where it's a lot harder for us to to find the talent we're looking for.
Does anybody here do any testing or personality kinds of gauging whether someone will fit with a culture?
We've dabbled in a couple of tests over the years. We've used StrengthsFinder before. And in the last couple of years, we've really committed to the DISC assessment. And we haven't always used it at the point of interviewing, but we recently talked about getting back to that and using that test a little bit earlier in the process.
You go through the motions of making sure that people are talented and that they have the skill set. But past that, it's just as important to us that people fit with our family. So we do a lot of lunches and dinners and phone conversations and just try to communicate over lots of different mediums so that you really get a full picture of someone. We use the DISC once people get in the door, really more as a tool to make sure that we understand each other and in a dynamic team, how best do you work with one another.
Can you talk a little bit about your culture and how you find people or why that's important?
Sure. Well, we produce mail, which is not interesting. We try to be interesting people. We try to run our business in an interesting way. Because just like you said, there's a lot of people looking for jobs, but you have to be competitive as well. We call Letter Logic our home away from home. The idea is that if you take extraordinary care of your people, that they'll take extraordinary care of your customers. So we have some pretty impressive benefits, but I really believe that you start with good salaries. It's not the most popular thing to say, but people don't work to have fun. Most of the time they work to get paid and support their families. So I really do think you have to start with that. So we have a whole host of things that really raise people's eyebrows and think, wow, I can make good money, take care of my family, have flex time so I can work from home if I need to. I can bring my well-behaved dog to work. But we really do ask a lot of people. We're not just joking around and having fun. The goal of our company is to never ever lose a customer.
You're listening to Letter Logic, and you could pretty well say that's Richards and Richards. We have 5 well-behaved dogs that are roaming the offices right now, and there's very strict rules about that. You bark the first time, you bite, you're way out of there. But it is an interesting culture that has evolved. One of the books that I read early on, and I'm a reader, that made one of the greatest impressions to me was something that follows what happens at Letter Logic, and the name of the book was The Customer Comes Second. And if you read it, it's Hal Rosenbluth's book. And the whole idea is take very good care of your employee, and customer service is naturally going to follow. We've had that. We're very rich on our benefits. We pay well. There's one thing that we do that I didn't hear, but I bet you also practice. We are very slow to hire and very quick to fire. Most people that have not worked out in our company have not worked out because the guy sitting next to them said, "I'm having to do his work," and we'll go back in and retrain. We're going to give you about 2 to 3 opportunities, and if you don't make it, we want you gone. And I have very strict rules. Guys, I'm in the information management business. You don't want anything that you have of yours to be getting out. So the rules that have been changed by my employees who've come to me and said, "Here's a better way to do this." Well, I'm very strict about my rules, except when a better idea comes along. And when they see that kind of stuff, they really like that they're participating. And when they see that they participated on getting rid of dead wood, they really like that. But they see that and I'll tell you what else that happens too. I have fired customers before. If you treat my employee poorly, I don't think it's going to be a good fit for us. And we just had to take care of one here recently, and it's not a fun thing to do, but I want to tell you how that goes through my organization when they realize that I'm on their side on this.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is powerful, I'm sure. So who wants to or who will tackle the issue of firing? You mentioned that a couple of times, dead wood, firing. It's hard. It is hard. It's hard as a small business owner.
No, it's not.
Tell me why it's
not hard. I disagree. It's the worst thing that I have to do.
Yeah.
But I'm typically in on that. But I hate to say this, but I always feel like I've set out a gang of rules. And if there's something that you're not able to follow there, you've made the choice not to do that. It's very simple at that point to me.
I have to say, I think it's harder the smaller the company is, because it's more like a family. I know you wanted to...
I sort of think about firing in 3 different types, and they're different levels of difficulty. You know, the first is people who just aren't able to get the job done, and they're not doing well, and those are not hard. You know, they tend to know it. You know, you've made it clear to them what the expectations were, and they weren't able to live up to it. And the second is they're just not a good fit for the company, you know, that there are conflicts with other people, or they're not a good fit for the organization. And that's a little trickier, because you say, you know, this is a competent employee, but there's something about the dynamics here that isn't working. And the most difficult thing for me is that, you know, most of the papers we bought were not in good shape when we bought them. You know, we acquired a lot of papers during and coming out of the recession where we had to go in and restructure. And there you're talking about letting people go who were good at their job. There just wasn't enough business.
Roddy, you or Dan want to have any words of wisdom for us on that?
My daughter's, when she was a teenager, she asked me one time, "Why are there 9 banks on this block?" It's a good question. And so it's on us because the services are essentially the same. We're a small bank, we have 2 branches. Certain things we cannot do, a lot of things we can do. So we have to focus on what we can do. And part of that is being able to be engaged in the customer's business, understand their goals, and know where they're going, and attempt to help them in some way. That requires a totally different basis of skills than was probably evident 20 or 25 years ago from bankers. And what we've had to do is change the expectations about what does it take to be competitive. So that's really been a challenge, but also an opportunity for our bank.
I want to shift gears a little bit, Chris. Maybe you're the best person to ask this question. I am always amazed at the difference between hiring a millennial and a baby boomer.
I think everybody I've talked to in kind of in the marketplace, they talk about what young people are they're technology natives versus whatnot, whatever the conversation is, but we haven't felt it. I feel like maybe it's just our small team, but we're all pretty good at just doing the work that needs to get done. And I don't know, I haven't seen an impact.
And you know, a small company, and my company's small too, it's like, you know, if you're 10 people and one person leaves, it's 10% of your workforce. So, you know, you think of it that way. I want to stay on the millennials thing. If anybody has any comments, you're nodding your head. And do we think millennials are different?
Well, I have a lot of millennials who are employees. We have a lot of writers and salespeople who we're not their first job, but we're their second or third job, and and some of them are looking for a career path in this field, and some of them are just looking for something to do while they become the next big songwriter, or they decide they will up and leave because they decide this is a good time in my life. I'm going to move to California, and so there's a lot more transition in that age group, whereas the baby boomers and my generation are a little more settled. They're glad to have a job. They want to they go home after work as opposed to going out with their and so we do have we have groups of employees who are also friends. They go out after work, they hang out, probably Clint's in the same situation, and that can make for some interesting office dynamics. When sometimes they start dating each other, or they get mad at they get upset with their friends over something personal that doesn't have anything to do with work, or vice versa, and so it does kind of make for some different office dynamics.
Clint, talk a little about the millennials and your thoughts on hiring.
Sure, we're also a fairly young shop, so we span a few younger generations. I think we've had, for the most part, really good luck with millennials. It's hard to take sort of almost 20 years worth of people and put them in one bucket. I don't want to be painted entirely by the Gen X brush. Some regrettable characteristics of our generation. But I feel that way about millennials. And our experience for the most part has been incredibly good. I think if there are maybe a few through lines for that generation, for us they seem to be, you've got a group of folks who want to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. They want to find some of that maybe on their own through their personal endeavors, but they want to find some of that at work. And I think if you can meet them halfway, if you can provide them with something that's a little bit more inspirational than a company out to make a few bucks, they will deliver a pretty high level of energy and passion and commitment. Maybe not a ton of patience, because they also want to be a meaningful part of that work and want that to happen sort of fairly early in the game. But for the vast majority of folks we've worked with and have hired over the years, it's been a really positive experience, and that level of energy and passion is a huge asset.
Well, my father worked for the same company all his life, and I've worked for two companies, one before this and myself. I mean, I can't imagine all the moving around, but it's almost as if when you look at a resume for someone in that age group, if they haven't moved around, they think they're stagnant. They think they're not growing. Right. Scott, anything from your perspective? You've got across the board.
It's like you said, my father worked for two companies his entire life, and the last one before he retired for 27 years. And so the loyalty aspect that the millennials have versus some of the other generations is a little different, because nowadays, you're ecstatic if you find somebody who's been someplace for 5 to 7 years versus the 20 plus years. But there are some things that you can take advantage of. Obviously they're technology savvy, and the other thing is that they can multitask better than most other generations, and so you can give them a lot, and they actually like to have a lot to do. They're very outcome and project-based focused, and so if you can, for lack of a better term, yoke their strengths, you can really get a lot done by using them in the right way. It just depends on how you address, how they're integrated into your workforce.
Sometimes I think we look at ourselves as victims of millennials, like they're changing the workplace and everyone's like pushing back, like why are these people so impatient and why do they want to be a part of every decision, and their resume only has like a year to 2 years at other places. But I think that's just a reflection of the world that we live in. We have a fairly young shop as well. Our receptionist is 65 years old. And I think it benefits him to have young people in the office, and I think it benefits the young people to have a 65-year-old in the office. And I think it's just kind of universal values that make sense whether you're 65 or 20 or 25 or 35, that people do want to be a part of something bigger than just yourself or themselves, and they want to feel like they matter.
you know, it seems like as I've been taking notes, as everyone's been talking, we relate employees so much to our customers. So you have to match the strengths of one to the needs of the other. And I guess that's when I've always made a determination of when somebody's working or not for the company very well. But everyone has, because everybody knows we're all in this together, and those are our customers. We can't lose them. But it keeps it dynamic in the workplace because, well, for one, we have been a kind of a startup company and changed a whole lot. So I guess we have something to offer them other than just a paycheck.
So if you had to name the top 2 or 3 things they appreciate in working for your firm, what would they be?
And this is kind of a touchy-feely word, maybe. Love. They feel loved. It's not just that we care for them. It seems very just light. But I feel like, hopefully they would say the same, but they feel like we are there with them.
Steve, 2 or 3 things. If you had to name the top 1, 2, or 3 things your employees appreciate, what would they be?
Have to go back to culture. We have a crew that runs together. You mentioned that dating. That brought up a whole new thing for our employee manual when we found out that 2 people were dating, and we have to start looking at that. Look, we've got a friendly group.
Really?
Are really friendly. No, they've bought tickets together. I started the thing of buying them tickets to get them to go to games. Well, they kept it going. I only bought a certain number. They kept on going. It's become a very cool thing for me to watch. The benefits that we have, we've had people to leave us and then want to come back. And because they realized it really wasn't, I didn't have a good perspective while I was here. And I went out and saw that I really do want to come back.
Yeah, that's great. Now, so from a big perspective, Scott,
Sure.
It's kind of hard to go to every, you got all these employees and extended families. When you're a large company, what are some of the things that employees these days are really appreciating?
Every month we'll have a lunch down in the main floor of our building to where everybody, admin assistants all the way up to the top levels of the company, comes and gets together. We recognize the new employees. We recognize people who have gone above and beyond their duties and reward them for that. And then the CEO of our company gives a presentation that tells everybody where the company is at that particular time, and there's no secrets at all. It's a very open and honest, open door and transparent culture that we have there.
Is that with the entire company? It's not open book management, but just...
It is, yeah. I mean, they'll share the numbers with everybody there. The other thing that I think that helps is, with QHR, one of our mottos is helping hospitals survive and thrive. And so what we do matters, and I think people really take pride in that. Most of our client hospitals are small, rural community hospitals, and what we do and the way we help them makes a difference out in those local communities, and I think people take a lot of pride in that.
Interesting. Dan, what about your shop here? What do people appreciate when you talk to the employees?
Well, we somewhat of a luxury in the fact that we're in an industry that's shrinking. So what was used against us, being small, being private, not a lot of locations, now is a positive. People have been with the bigger companies, nothing against the bigger companies, such that they are just a number. There's a lot of rotation, there's a lot of movement. We don't want to be out there and just selling comparable and comparing comp packages. When you start doing that, it's not a win for us. So at the end of the day, what we are selling is more like you all were saying. We're selling an environment, an atmosphere, and almost trying to sell it as kind of a club deal, both from a customer and an employee standpoint. So that is what we're selling versus just comp to comp. But we've got to be ready because, again, if you're only hiring 1 or 2 people a year, and you make a bad hire, then the seesaw it really makes it tough.
Yeah, Clint?
Yeah, I think sort of goes back to the candidate's resume being really just sort of the Cliff Notes, story on paper that gets you in the door, and really what we want to see is the story they tell, right, and the experiences that they're able to sort of share and contextualize. And I think the offer letter is sort of the opposite of that. It's sort of the same thing from the company side. It's like, look, there are prerequisites to sort of entice that person to join us, and it's a good pay package, and it's expected benefits, including health insurance and other things like 401k, profit sharing, those sorts of things. But really the perks that folks love the most are, again, the interesting work that hopefully they're going to have a chance to do, and the very interesting, smart, talented, friendly folks that they're going to be able to do it with them.
There's a relatively new book out by a guy named Dan Pink, and I think it's called Drive. It is not about salary, he says, and that you should never give a bonus for performance. That you should always give the money before the performance or as a surprise, because it takes away the intrinsic value in the job.
Part of that study found that the thing that people respond to, they get the most fulfillment from, is progress. Right, is seeing that their work and the work of the group that they're a part of is moving forward and accomplishing things, that trumps anything else you could sort of put into the mix.
But I tend to agree for a lot of employees, and to your question about, our biggest asset is people like working for the publication that they produce. They don't say they work for Southcom, they say I work on the Scene, or I work on the City Paper, I work on Focus, and that they're really proud of that, and every month or every week they have a product to show that's very public. Their friends see it, it's out there in the community, they get a lot of feedback, and they take a lot of pride in what they do. Most of them could probably make more money if they went and did something else, but they really like being attached to that product that they work on, and having it to show.
Well, it's interesting when you think about the notion of going in to have that conversation about your salary or potential pay increase or benefits that may happen once a year, and that sense of progress is happening pretty much on a daily basis. Am I doing great work? Am I getting fulfillment from that work? Are we moving forward together as a company?
I'm comfortable that my employee who sees you walk in the door, who thinks you might be potential customer, knows that he has a little bit in it by giving that first impression, that good first impression. They want to know the progress of my business. And the thing that I love in my business right now is that I have a number of boxes in the building. There are 960,000.
Gosh.
Now, and I'm keeping up with them very efficiently every day. There's my little sales promo. But I want to let you know that my employees know when there's 970 and 980, and they knew when a new client comes in, and we have 30,000 boxes coming in right now, they realize we're making more money. Now, the other end of that is they're knowing that I'm going to share that with them. And they've got the picture. I want to tell you, I have 55, and if they're not tuned in, that's the ones that are not going to make it, that they don't fit in that, because I've got a crew that simply sits there and they're all coming by going like, we're doing good, aren't we? Yeah, we've got to operate efficiently, but yes, we've got more boxes. So my guys, I love having that kind of a situation going on right now. They understand more business equals more money.
I think in regards to the comment you made about the book, I think it can be all of the above. I think if you have performance-based bonuses and it's tied to what they do individually and how that helps the company, I think that can be part of it. It also helps on a competitive advantage when you're trying to bring people in the door, because you know that your competitors are offering a bonus for this or a bonus for that, and so you have to be on the same playing field. But I think what you're talking about, and I like what you said, in that it's the small little things that you can do, and those are the things that develop the loyalty amongst the employees, because they realize that you're recognizing them.
It seems that our crew really wants to be in on things. Recently we had them involved in the goal setting, and they want to know where we headed and how we're going to get there. Dana and I laid out the parameters, and they exceeded in every instance what we would have given it as their goals. The second thing is they wanted to make sure that we had some efficient way to measure how they were doing versus those goals on a timely basis. Actually, more of an interest in that than we really thought they might. A lot of the goals were team goals. And it wasn't really all about them. It was all about how did the team perform that quarter, that month relative to the goals. Even as small as we are, the communications challenge is pretty big, and that's something we really need to focus on.
We've talked about that recently, where we're an open book shop, and I think choosing to be open book is sort of the easy part of it. It's like, how do you actually open the books in a meaningful, relevant way that connects back to teams and individuals and sort of what they're doing and how it all sort of adds up. And that's something that we constantly work on and struggle with, right? If you're committed to that sort of open, transparent, collaborative culture, how do you make sure that communication, information awareness is constantly infused into that? And so that's something that we work on pretty much constantly. It's a big
Chris,
deal.
A lot of the way that I think about interacting with employees is kind of psychological, behavioral, on a hierarchy of needs. You know, they need to be paid and meet basic needs on the very bottom. And then to have the most fulfilled career with Bookful or whatever company, to think of your employee as trying to attain the next level up. I think it relates to the book that you were referencing earlier too, that it's not just about pay, but it's kind of going into realms that we often don't think about.
You know, the regulatory environment about, you know, when you're in HR is frightening to me. We're a small business, so I have sort of a buy, but for many things. But you know, you can't ask a lot of questions, and you can't say a lot of things, and you can't tell them how to dress. You can tell them they have to dress professionally. Scott, how do you address sort of from the big picture of what you can and can't say to employees to really to communicate and make them understand how to fit in the role?
You know, most people nowadays are smart enough to read between the lines and get it. And so I think if you're open and you're honest and provide that communication right off the bat, you know, most of the time they can pick that up fairly easily on their own. It's not something where you have to be as rigid and you know, documented in how you do it.
Listen, you know, this little group down here has it a whole lot easier than this group does.
Because we're small.
We do, because we're small. We do, because I can simply sit across the table and say I'm not appreciating what he's wearing, and saying we're going to uniforms. And then then the whole crew said we're mad. I let them choose their uniforms. I let them choose the colors and where they came from, and took that completely off the table. We have the option, being this small, to take care of a lot of these things that they simply can't snap their finger and take care of.
Well,
thank you, Lord, for small business. Thank you, guys.
I love small business.
Single locations. I think I underestimated how complex it was to try and manage offices in 8 states. You know, which had their own rules and you know, and different cultures in each of those offices, and it's a real challenge.
So my next question, it may be the last question, I don't know, but I wanted to talk about what keeps you up at night, you know, from an employer perspective.
I would say that the thing that keeps me up at night is more about what I'm doing or not doing enough of to keep folks really engaged, because we're very fortunate. We have a tremendously talented, smart, capable group of people, and I feel like typically when we sort of you know, fall a little bit short in terms of overall, you know, company staff engagement, it's more to do with me and with us and sort of our efforts to make that happen.
Similarly, I think what I worry about is that I'm not listening. I'm not listening to them, and I'm not attentive to what they need or how we need to take care of our customers, because they're the ones who are really out there in the field.
The challenge with a smaller business is that I don't have really easy career paths for staff, right? Maybe there's just one step up, or maybe there's no step up. And we're very lucky in that we really have great team players. But how do you keep them from getting bored and staying engaged, and, you know, where do they go? Because they're smart.
And I have always found that those employees and those people with a sense of intrinsic value, who they know they want to do the best job they can do for themselves because they want to live up to their own expectations. I've always found they make just the most wonderful employees. And if any of you have anything to close us out with in regard to that, about what's the ideal employee?
Yeah, I tend to find that the ideal employee is the one whose name comes up the most in conversations about new opportunities and new and bigger jobs.